They say when you wear the uniform, you earn respect. That might be true unless you're wearing it before your family. I'm Captain Lena McAdams, U.S. Army. I've led convoys through war zones, trained soldiers twice my size, and navigated literal and political minefields. But nothing prepared me for a 4-day leave at home in Charleston. It started with a phone call to my mom. I told her I was returning to visit and had some personal stuff to take care of. That stuff was picking out jewelry for my engagement. Not a big announcement, just a quiet, meaningful step with someone I care about. But before I could say anything else, my mom asked, "Does Danielle know you're coming?" Not, "That's great, honey," or "Can't wait to see you." Just, "Does your sister know?" Like Danielle, the mayor of the family, now. I need a hall pass to come home. I swallowed it. I've had plenty of practice. My family's the kind that treats emotional distance like a competitive sport. Danielle, the older sister, has always been the shining star. Blonde, loud, PTA president vibes. She used to call me G.I. Jane like it was a slur. At school, I was the quiet one, the shadow. And honestly, I didn't care. I just wanted out. That's why I joined the military the second I turned 18, not for some noble flag-waving mission. I just wanted to go somewhere I didn't have to fight for space at the dinner table. I wanted rank, rules, and people who didn't call me dramatic for having boundaries. 20 years later, I got all that and a security clearance. The Army gave me something my family never did. A clear sense of who I am and why I matter. But somehow, every time I come home, I feel like the awkward kid at a party I wasn't invited to. So yeah, I packed light. Uniform neatly pressed, engagement gift plan locked in, expectations buried 6 feet deep. What could go wrong in 4 days? The humidity slapped me in the face the second I stepped off that plane like it had a grudge. Charleston in June is like stepping into a hot towel someone has already used. My dad picked me up from the airport. Didn't even get out of the car. Just leaned over and popped the trunk like I was his Uber. We rode mostly in silence, except for one question. "You still in the Army, right?" I nodded. "That's good, I guess." "Cool. Thanks for the warmth, Dad." When we pulled into the driveway, the front yard looked the same. Danielle's SUV was already there, parked diagonally like she owns the damn grass. The porch had a new welcome home sign, but I'm 90% sure that was from when Danielle's kid returned from a school trip. Inside, my mom was baking like we were hosting the Queen. Flour was everywhere, and there was loud music and kitchen chaos. And Danielle? She came down the stairs like it was prom night. Hair done, voice loud, hugging me like we were best friends. "You look so intense," she said, squinting at my uniform like it was camouflage with opinions. "Still doing that whole Army thing?" "Still. Like it's a phase. Like, I'm still doing braces or still listening to emo music." At dinner, she took over. Stories about her job, husband, and Instagram-worthy Aruba vacation. Every time I opened my mouth, someone interrupted. I gave up halfway through my story about a training accident where I disarmed a live grenade. Danielle blinked and said, "Wow. That's scary. Anyway, you guys should have seen what Mason did at swim class." I cut my chicken and nodded like it didn't matter. Like I hadn't saved 3 lives that day. Like Mason's kick turn was the headline story here. At one point, my mom looked at me and said, "You know, if you smiled more, people wouldn't be so intimidated by you." I wanted to tell her that soldiers don't smile during minefield drills. I've learned how to shut down emotion to keep people alive, but instead, I said, "I'll work on that." You'd think a uniform would buy me a seat at the table. It turns out that's just another weird outfit I wore to dinner. It's funny. People outside this family think I'm strong, respected, unshakable. But here, I'm still Lena, who talks too little and thinks she's better than everyone just because she's in the Army. If you've ever gone home and felt like your achievements don't exist within those walls, drop a comment. I want to know I'm not the only one. And if you think family drama doesn't count as a battlefield, go ahead and subscribe. You're in for one hell of a story. After dinner, I sat in my old room, medals still boxed under the bed. Same wallpaper, same dusty shelves. Same feeling that no matter how far I go, home never quite lets me arrive. And somewhere deep down, I already knew the worst of this visit hadn't even started. I left my room when I heard the microwave beep. Growing up, no one ever told me that silence has weight, but it pressed down on your shoulders like wet gear in that house. My parents were in the kitchen reheating something they called leftovers, even though I hadn't seen it the first time. Danielle was already at the table, texting with one hand and spooning mashed potatoes with the other like she ran the place. She looked at me and said, "Oh good, you're alive." Then she went back to her phone. Mom poured sweet tea like she was hosting a Southern tea party, and Dad opened his third beer without asking if anyone else wanted one. I sat down and tried to blend in. Tried to remind myself that this was just 4 days. "So, you're still stationed in. Where was it again?" Dad asked if my base had changed weekly and if I hadn't been there for 3 years. "Fort Belvoir," Danielle snorted. "Still chasing ranks, huh?" I gave her a look. "It's called promotion." "Well, some of us chase husbands," she said with a grin. "Guess we all have our goals." Mom laughed, like it was just sisterly banter. I didn't. Dinner tasted like nothing. I chewed but couldn't focus. Danielle told a long, meandering story about Mason's kindergarten science fair and how she had to explain to his teacher why volcanoes don't need glitter. Dad laughed too hard, maybe to avoid saying something real. When Mom asked about my work, I thought maybe just maybe they wanted to hear. I mentioned I'd be speaking on a panel in DC soon about female leadership in the military. It was a big deal. A huge deal, honestly. They were flying me in. Danielle cut in before I could finish. "Do you guys know they gave Lena an award once for just—" "It was the Army Commendation Medal," I said flatly. "Sure," she said. "Still sounds made up." I looked at Mom, who stirred her green beans like she was in a trance. No one said anything. No one defended me. Again. "Are you still with that?" "What's his name?" Mom asked. I said his name, clear and slow. "Ethan." "And yes." Danielle squinted. "Isn't he the one who doesn't post you on Instagram?" "Not everyone lives online, Danielle." "Sounds like he's hiding something." "I think he's just a grown man with a security clearance." Dad snorted. "Well, hell, maybe he's smarter than I thought." I pushed my plate away. "I'm done." "Already?" Mom asked, voice sweet like a trap. "Yeah, I'm not that hungry." Danielle leaned back in her chair like she'd won a round. "You've always been dramatic." No one corrected her. No one looked up. I took my plate to the sink, rinsed it, and dried it, like nothing was wrong. I moved like muscle memory. That's the thing about growing up in a house like that, your body learns to perform long after your brain wants to shut down. Later, in the hallway, I passed the family wall. You know the one. Baby pictures, graduation photos, Danielle's wedding, Mason's first day of school. Me? One photo of me in uniform was cropped badly, tucked in a corner like an afterthought. I was standing with a group, but Danielle's kid was the only visible face. Figures. Back in my room, I opened my laptop to look at the itinerary for my panel in DC, just to feel like someone valued my time. My inbox had a message from a retired major I'd worked with 2 years ago. "Still proud of you," it said. "You keep showing them what leadership looks like." Simple words. But damn if it didn't hit harder than anything I'd heard at that table. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling fan spinning like it had somewhere better to be. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was just tired of carrying the weight of being the only one who saw through the family's bullshit and still showed up anyway. Danielle once told me that the military made me cold. But maybe I was just done pretending warmth came from people who only smiled when you were small. And the thing is, I didn't come home to fight. I came home to breathe. To mark a milestone in my quiet way. But now that I was here, I could already feel the pull. The need to prove, protect, and keep one foot planted, no matter how hard they tried to knock me off center. I wasn't a guest in this family. I wasn't a project, or a disappointment, or a threat. I was just Lena. A soldier. A daughter. A woman who'd seen enough sandstorms and silence to know when a room was a battlefield. And in this house, I wasn't leaving my back exposed. The next morning, I slipped out before anyone else was awake. Charleston was already heating up, but the quiet streets made it feel like the city hadn't opened for business yet. I liked it that way before the noise, before the commentary, before anyone could remind me who they thought I was. I parked in front of Langston and Company Jewelers downtown. It was not the flashiest place, but it was old school, with dark wood floors and people who knew the difference between price and meaning. I'd called ahead. They had something on hold. The bell above the door chimed as I walked in. A woman behind the counter looked up, smiled, and said, "Captain McAdams?" I nodded. She had warm eyes and a southern accent that made "yes ma'am" sound like a compliment. "I pulled a few pieces you might like. You said you were looking for something modest but personal?" "Exactly. It's for someone who doesn't care about diamonds. But he deserves something that matters." She laid out a few options. Simple chains, a silver band, a pair of cufflinks engraved with a compass design. I picked up the cufflinks and turned them over. On the back was space for initials, or maybe something more. "I could have the coordinates of where you met engraved," she offered. "We met on base, middle of nowhere," I said. She smiled. "Then it probably means something." It did. More than I let on. Ethan and I had trained together on a joint operation 3 years ago. Nothing romantic at first. Just mutual respect. Then, there is mutual frustration with the command. Then, a shared bottle of awful coffee in a tent during a thunderstorm. That night, we stopped pretending we weren't staring at each other across the briefing table. We hadn't talked about rings, we hadn't talked about timelines, but we both knew. I didn't need a proposal to know he was all in. So, on this trip, I wanted to get him something. Not a ring to ask a question, but something to say, "I see you. I value you. I choose you" out loud. The woman brought over a tray of men's bracelets. I picked one up and brushed my thumb along the surface. She said, "Military steel, durable, like you." "Like you." I smirked. Durable's one word for it. A couple entered the store behind me as I tried on a few pieces. Loud, laughing, talking over each other about something on TikTok. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. I knew that voice. Danielle. Of course, she'd be here. Of all places, of all moments, she had to show up now, probably to get some piece of overpriced gold for some charity gala she'd throw for people who already had too much. She saw me before I saw her. "Oh, look who's here. Thought you'd be shopping for bullets, not bracelets." I said nothing. Just kept looking at the tray. "Wow," she continued. "Didn't know soldiers pick their own gifts now. Is this, like, a reward for not dying?" The woman behind the counter stiffened. She looked at me like she was waiting for permission to intervene. I shook my head gently. "Not yet. I'm buying something meaningful," I said. "You should try it sometime." Danielle fake laughed. "For who? That boyfriend of yours? What's his name, Ethan? The one who doesn't even come home with you?" Real supportive. I held up a small, titanium bracelet with etched ridges and a magnetic clasp. You don't need someone to hold your hand in public to know they've got your back. RM. She stepped closer. You don't need to buy jewelry to prove you're worthy either. I met her eyes. Number, I just wanted to do something kind. For someone who doesn't make everything about themselves. That landed. I saw it. The flicker. "Good luck making the army your maid of honor," she muttered. I turned to the woman behind the counter. "I'll take this one. And I'd like it engraved." "Of course. What would you like it to say?" I looked down at the bracelet. Thought about the way Ethan always noticed when I was 2 seconds too quiet. The way he never told me to smile more. He asked what my day was like, even when he'd just returned from a 14-hour op. Then I said, "Courage," twice. "Twice?" she asked. I nodded. "One for each of us." Danielle scoffed. "So dramatic." I signed the receipt and pocketed the claim tag. As I walked past Danielle, I said, "Enjoy your shopping. Maybe pick up something engraved with, 'Not everything's about you.'" "I'm sick." She said nothing for once. Outside, the sun had climbed high. My phone buzzed a message from Ethan. Just a photo of his dog curled up in a tent. Caption: "This guy misses you more than I do, barely." I smiled. Inside the store, I had picked something simple. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like I'd made a decision that wasn't about survival, it was about connection. And no one, not even Danielle, was going to steal that. I was standing at the far counter, still looking at a set of small gold studs, when I heard the same voice I'd spent years trying to outgrow. "Danielle." Louder this time. Close. "Oh, please. Real emeralds or not, that shade looks like it came out of a cereal box." Her laugh cut across the room like bad perfume. She wasn't alone. Two women flanked her, one of them her best friend from high school, now a real estate agent with a fake smile. The other I didn't recognize, probably some wine night recruit. They didn't see me at first. I stayed turned away, hoping the gods of camouflage would give me a break. But my uniform doesn't exactly blend into crystal lighting and velvet jewelry chairs. Then I heard, "Oh my God. Speak of the devil." I turned. Danielle blinked, then smirked like she'd just caught me shoplifting. "Wow. Didn't expect to see you here," she said. "Let me guess you're buying something to pin on your uniform? Metal's not flashy enough anymore?" I ignored her. The woman behind the counter gave me a quiet glance, unsure whether to step in. Danielle took a step closer. "Or, wait, don't tell me. Are you finally getting married? To that ghost boyfriend of yours? I mean, if he exists." One of her friends giggled. I looked her dead in the eye. "I'm buying something for someone who actually matters." Danielle raised her eyebrows. "Oof. Passive-aggressive much?" "Just passive enough to match your charm," I said. Her voice dropped a note, just enough to warn me. "You don't get to come home once every 2 years and act like you're better than everyone." "I don't think I'm better," I said. "I think I'm exhausted." That hit. She didn't like being accused of anything real. "I've been dealing with everything here," she snapped. "Family, bills, taking care of things. While you've been off playing soldier, cosplaying in the desert." I felt something go tight in my chest. Not rage, disbelief. I had spent years getting up at 0400, moving units through war zones, making life or death decisions while she updated Instagram captions about her charity brunches. I looked at the woman behind the counter again, about to ask for my receipt and leave. Just walk out, de-escalate, be the professional. But then Danielle crossed the invisible line. She stepped closer and hissed, "You've always been an embarrassment. You hide behind that uniform because without it, you're still just the weird little sister no one liked." I stared at her. "And you hide behind people who are too polite to tell you you're mean." She rolled her eyes, scoffing. "You think being in the army makes you noble? You're just government property with a paycheck." I could have walked. I should have walked. But Danielle wasn't here to argue. She was here to humiliate. And she wasn't going to leave without a scene. That's when she said it. "You're just a toy soldier, marching around pretending like someone wants you." And then, she slapped me. A real slap. Not playful. Not theatrical. Just a flat, sharp, open-palmed smack across my face that echoed through the store like someone had dropped a tray of glass. Time froze. I didn't move. Not out of fear, not out of shock. Just cold instinct. I've stood under live fire. I've watched bombs fall from 50 yards. But nothing prepares you for a public hit from someone who shares your blood. My jaw stiffened. The woman behind the counter gasped. Danielle stood there like she'd done something triumphant. And that's when I heard him. A voice. Deep, steady, controlled. "Touch her again and see what happens." Heads turned. Everyone in the store froze. Near the platinum watches, a man in uniform stood at the far end of the room. Not flashy, not loud. Just composed. Silver oak leaves on his shoulder. Army dress jacket. Colonel. He stepped forward. "You just assaulted a U.S. officer in uniform. That's not a family issue. That's criminal." Danielle looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "She's my sister," she blurted. He didn't blink. "That's not a license to hit someone. Not even at home. Especially not here." Danielle's friends stood there, mute, suddenly finding the floor fascinating. The colonel turned to me. Are you okay, Captain? I nodded once. The store manager appeared from a side hallway. The colonel spoke again, this time to him. You should ask that woman to leave. Immediately. Danielle started to protest. This is a misunderstanding. She was provoking. Ma'am, the manager said, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. Her face went red. Her mouth opened and closed like she was calculating how to spin it. But the moment had slipped. She turned and walked out the door, her heels clacking on the tile like punctuation marks in a fight she didn't win. The colonel waited until the door closed. Then he looked at me. You handled that better than most. I exhaled. I hadn't moved once since the slap. He offered a nod. Then I turned to the counter. Could I get a gift box? I'm already late to a retirement party. The saleswoman nodded, still wide-eyed. I glanced at my reflection in the glass counter. No tears, no rage. Just me. Standing tall. Still here. The second the door shut behind Danielle, the air in that jewelry store felt 20 degrees lighter. I wasn't breathing heavily, but my heart was doing push-ups in my chest. Not from fear. From restraint. The colonel turned his attention back to the watch counter like nothing had just exploded in aisle 5. I stood there, the shape of Danielle's hand still stamped on my cheek like some kind of twisted family seal. The store clerk passed me a cold bottle of water. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her face said it all, shock, pity, and something close to admiration. I took the bottle. My hands weren't even shaking. Colonel turned back toward me. You want to press charges? He asked, calm and professional. I shook my head. Not worth it. He nodded slowly, but not in agreement, more like he understood the cost of picking battles. I'm Colonel Mark Renshaw, he said, offering a hand. Captain Lena McAdams. He smiled. Figured. I remember your name from a commendation report 2 years back. You led a route clearance unit through the Kalat sector, right? I blinked. You read that? I endorsed it, he said. Good work. You kept a convoy from getting wiped out. That takes more than just guts. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Praise from someone like him didn't come with flattery. It landed like a fact. He lowered his voice slightly. I've seen a lot of soldiers hold the line in combat. Less so in public, especially when it's personal. What you just did, that was discipline. I gave a half smile. It was survival. Same thing, most days, he said. The woman behind the counter cleared her throat, watching us like we were both carved from stone. Would you like to continue your purchase, Captain McAdams? I looked down at the bracelet. It was perfectly still on the velvet tray, like it hadn't just witnessed a family implosion. Yes, I said. And the engraving? She nodded and took it back behind the counter. Colonel Renshaw glanced toward the front door. Was that your sister? Unfortunately. She always that. Hostile? Yes. He gave a short laugh. You know, in the army, we'd write her up for conduct unbecoming. She'd probably frame the paperwork, I said. We both chuckled. It felt weird laughter, after that mess but real. The kind of laugh you share with someone who understands that sometimes surviving your own family is more complicated than surviving a war zone. Renshaw adjusted his cufflink. You got somewhere safe to go? I looked at him. Safe? Sure. Comfortable? Not really. He nodded. If you ever need a recommendation out of Charleston, let me know. I know a few commanders who'd take you in a heartbeat. Thanks, I said. But I think I've still got a few things to finish here. He didn't push. It just gave me a look as if he knew the shape of unfinished business all too well. The saleswoman returned with a small white bag and a receipt. I signed it. As I turned to leave, Renshaw stopped me. One more thing, he said. People think dignity means never getting hit. They're wrong. Dignity is staying on your feet after someone tries to knock you down. You did that. Don't let anyone rewrite the story. I nodded once. Copy that, sir. Outside, the street was bright and loud, but I moved through it like a fog. Not numb, just aware, hyper-aware. The slap wasn't the part that stung the most. It was the eyes. The ones who watched it happen. The silence in the room. That kind of thing makes you feel 10 years old again, wearing borrowed shoes, trying not to cry in church. Danielle didn't slap me to hurt me. She slapped me to remind me of my place, the one she's always assigned me, the one where I'm never enough. But something had shifted. That man, Colonel Renshaw, had no stake in our drama. No bloodline, no backstory. But he saw something. He called it assault. Not just sisters. Not a bad moment, he gave it the name it deserved. And just like that, the rules changed. For years, I thought strength meant staying quiet, enduring, letting it slide. But standing still and taking a hit? That's not a strength. That's paralysis dressed up in discipline. Back at the rental car, I sat behind the wheel for a full minute before turning the ignition. My face still buzzed from the impact, but it wasn't pain, it was clarity. No one ever says it out loud, but sometimes your worst enemy is the person who knows your middle name and your childhood allergies. And sometimes, the person who saves you isn't family. It's a stranger with a spine. As I pulled out of the lot, I saw my reflection in the rearview mirror. Still standing. Still me. And that was going to have to be enough. I didn't go straight back to the house. I pulled into a small park near the river and sat on a bench overlooking the water. That bracelet was still in its crisp little bag, tucked on the seat beside me like a witness to everything that had just unfolded. My face had cooled. The red had faded. But that slap, it didn't disappear. It had done something Danielle never intended. It knocked me out of whatever spell I'd been under. That unconscious hope that maybe, if I came back with humility, a smile, and some form of success, they'd see me differently. They didn't. They never would. The breeze was calm, barely rustling the water. It reminded me of a mission I'd led once in Kandahar. We'd been stuck at a checkpoint for 10 hours in unbearable heat. Tempers rising. Morale low. And then one of my soldiers pulled out a deck of cards and just started playing solitaire on a dusty ammo crate. No drama. No tension. Just quid de fiance. That's what I felt now. A silent resolve. No need to shout, no need to retaliate, just move with purpose. Keep playing your cards. Let people watch. I didn't even notice I had a message until my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was from an unknown number. Colonel Renshaw here. Just checking you got home all right. If you need a formal statement for the incident, I can assist. But off the record, you carried yourself like an officer should. Thought you deserved to hear that again. I stared at the message. Short, direct. Military to the bone. And yet, more validating than anything my family had ever said to me. I typed back. I appreciate it, sir. I'm fine. But thank you for everything back there. He replied almost immediately. You're a damn good officer. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Stay steady. Stay steady. It sounded simple. But, in my family, steadiness was an act of rebellion. I stayed in that park until my phone buzzed again, this time from Ethan. Zoom call still on for tonight? I texted back yes, then paused. I snapped a picture of the bracelet bag and sent it to him without context. He responded with, You didn't. I did. Now I really miss you. I smiled, for real this time. Back at the house, Danielle's car was gone. Probably off rallying support or spinning the story into something she could live with. My parents were in the living room watching television. My mom looked up and said, Everything okay? I said, yeah. No follow-up, no questions. Just, okay, like I'd gone out for milk. I went to the guest room, locked the door, changed into sweats, and stared at the ceiling. Then I sat up, grabbed my laptop, and opened my army email. Not to file a complaint, not to write a report, but to finish something I'd been putting off, a personal reflection for a leadership course I'd been asked to teach. It was due next week, but I suddenly felt clear. The prompt was simple. Describe a time you embodied leadership under pressure. I wrote. I was standing in a jewelry store in Charleston when my sister slapped me across the face. It wasn't the first time she tried to humiliate me, but it was the first time I didn't let her define the moment. I stood still. I stayed calm. I didn't react for the room, I responded for myself. That's what leadership is. Not noise, not retaliation. Presence. I hit send. That night, I poured myself a glass of water and sat in bed, waiting for Ethan's call. When his face popped up on screen, I felt like the whole day had reset. He wore that ratty hoodie and always said he'd throw it away, but never did. His dog barked in the background. I could hear the generators hum behind him. He was still deployed, miles from decent Wi-Fi. "Hey," he said. "You look like you've had a day. You have no idea. Want to talk about it?" "Nope." He nodded. "Okay. Want to talk about something else?" I held up the bracelet. His eyes widened. "Lena." I shrugged. "Call it a pre-engagement engagement gift." He smiled, soft and crooked, as when trying to play it cool and failing. "I didn't get you anything," he said. "But I'd re-enlist just to wear that." "You better not," I said. "We're getting out of this thing someday." He looked at me. "You're getting out of a lot more than that." I paused. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer to the camera. "You think this family story ends in Charleston? Nah. You're just cleaning house. You're making space for the life you actually want." I didn't answer. But he was right. The next morning, before anyone else woke up, I opened a blank doc and started drafting something I never thought I'd write. A request for reassignment to DC. Not to run away. Not to escape. But because I had a feeling something bigger was coming. Not from my family. From me. And for once, I wanted to be ready. When I walked into the kitchen the next morning, I found my dad holding his phone like it had just insulted him. My mom sat across from him with that tight-lipped expression she reserved for tax season and neighborhood gossip. I poured a cup of coffee. No one said good morning. Then Dad muttered, "You seen this?" He turned the phone toward me. Grainy footage. Jewelry store interior. I already knew what I was looking at before I saw it. Danielle's hand was flying through the air. My head turned slightly. The pause. The Colonel's voice from off-screen. "Touch her again and see what happens." A shaky zoom. Muffled gasps. And then the video cut out. I stared at it for a moment. No sound in the room except the AC clicking on. "Where did you get that?" I asked. Dad shrugged. "It's everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, some military blog. A guy on Reddit said you're the blueprint for professional restraint. Whatever that means." He blinked. "Someone film it?" Mom spoke up. "The saleswoman. Apparently she sent it to her niece, and her niece uploaded it thinking it was badass. It's been shared like 500,000 times." I took a slow sip of coffee. The heat barely registered. "You humiliated your sister," Mom said, quiet and sharp. "I didn't do anything. You stood there and let a stranger intervene in a family matter." I stared at her. She slapped me. She was emotional. So was I. I just didn't hit anyone. "Daddy." Dad set the phone down like it had burned. "People are tagging your name, commenting on your rank. This isn't good for the family." I laughed once, short and humorless. "It's great for the army, though." He narrowed his eyes. "That colonel, did you ask him to get involved?" I didn't even know he was there. "Well, now everyone thinks our family is abusive and you're some kind of hero." I leaned on the counter. "Are you upset about the slap or the fact that someone else finally noticed?" Silence. I returned to my room, pulled out my phone, and opened Twitter. There it was. Hundreds of reposts. Screenshots, articles. Army captain stands her ground in public altercation, exemplifies military discipline. Colonel intervenes after civilian strikes officer in uniform. Under that was a photo of me, head turned, jaw tight, face calm. I should have felt exposed. But what I felt was relief. For the first time, people saw it. The dynamic. The imbalance. The crap I'd been swallowing for decades that was always written off as just sisters being sisters. In that video, Danielle didn't look like a strong woman having a bad day. She looked petty, entitled. Wrong. I hadn't asked for any of it, but there it was. In the world. Out loud. Then I saw the message icon blinking. Dozens of DMs. One from an Army PR contact. One from a Pentagon official I'd met once at a conference. And one from Colonel Renshaw. Didn't mean to get famous today. But if you need help managing the fallout, I know people. I replied. I'm fine, just surprised. He sent back. You shouldn't be. The world's starving for examples of calm under pressure. You just served one on a silver platter. A knock on the door pulled me out of it. My mom. I opened it, already bracing. She stood with her arms crossed. Danielle hasn't come home since yesterday. Not my department, I said. She's devastated. So was I. You think this attention is good? That this makes you look strong? I didn't ask for it. But I'm not apologizing. Mom's voice cracked. You could have let it go. I did. For 20 years. She looked like she might say more, but didn't. Just left the room, slow and quiet. That afternoon, Ethan called again. We didn't talk about the video. He'd seen it, but he didn't bring it up. Instead, he asked if I decided on my next post. I'm thinking about DC, I said. Finally, he smiled. A place where people get it. Maybe. That evening, I got a text from someone I hadn't heard from in over a decade. Captain Janelle Rojas. We'd trained together in Fort Hood before the promotions and serious deployments. Girl, that video is everywhere. I just wanted to say what you did. That meant something, more than you know. I typed back. Wasn't trying to prove anything. Just tired. She wrote. Exactly why it hit so hard. Call me sometime. N. I sat on my bed, scrolling through the comment sections. Thousands of people who didn't know me, didn't know Danielle, didn't know Charleston, but they saw the moment. And they recognized it. It wasn't about drama. It wasn't even about the slap. It was about boundaries. And how rare it is to see someone hold one. I was folding my duffel bag when the call came in. The number was unknown, and the Virginia area code was wrong. Not the spam kind. The kind that makes your spine straighten out of habit. Captain McAdams? A female voice asked. Yes, ma'am. This is Colonel Dana Whitaker, Joint Public Affairs Office at the Pentagon. Am I catching you at a bad time? No, ma'am. I'm available. We've been following the incident in Charleston. Unfortunate situation. But your composure drew attention at several levels. I stayed quiet. I've been trained enough to know when someone's getting to the real point. We'd like to invite you to speak at a roundtable on professional conduct and leadership under public scrutiny. Small panel. Civilian and military voices. DC, 10 days from now. You'd be representing active duty personnel. I blinked. May I ask why I was chosen? There's a difference between doing your job and becoming the example people look to when they want to understand what leadership actually looks like. You've become that. I sat down on the bed, slowly. Understood, ma'am. I'd be honored. Travel details will be in your inbox by noon. She paused. You handled something deeply personal in a deeply professional way, Captain. We've got enough people making noise. We need more like you who can make a point without raising their voice. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. She hung up. No drawn-out goodbye, just business. I set the phone down and stared at my packed bag. I'd come home expecting 4 days of family awkwardness, a quiet gift, maybe a little fresh air. Instead, I was about to represent the Army in Washington because my sister couldn't control her temper in a jewelry store. Downstairs, I could hear my dad opening another beer and the familiar sound of the news anchor he always watched at full volume. If I walked into the kitchen and told them I'd just been invited to speak in DC, they'd probably say oh and return to folding napkins. I didn't bother. Instead, I pulled out my uniform again, double-checking my ribbons and pins. I even cleaned my boots. Not because I had to, because I wanted to remember what earned me this moment. The email landed right on time. Travel itinerary, briefing packet, dress code, the whole nine. Attached was a list of the other panelists. 2 civilian analysts, 1 congressional aide, a retired Marine colonel, and I. That night, Ethan called. You really about to head into the belly of the beast? He said. Apparently so. Good. They need someone who's not afraid of the sound of their own silence. I'm still figuring out what to say. Say the truth. That's what hit people hardest about that video. It wasn't the slap. It was the fact that you didn't retaliate. You just stood there and made it impossible for anyone to spin it. I didn't even mean to do that. Exactly. We discussed logistics, base protocols, and whether his deployment was getting extended. It was all ordinary stuff, but it felt like the first everyday conversation I'd had in days. The next morning, my mom caught me before I left the house. "You heading back to base?" she asked, holding her coffee like a peace offering. "Number, I've got orders to report to DC. Her eyebrows rose. "Why?" "Public affairs. Panel on leadership." A pause. "Because of that video?" I didn't answer. "Well," she said, "just don't say anything that makes the family look bad." I gave a dry smile. "I won't need to say anything for that." She didn't stop me. As I pulled away in the rental car, I passed Danielle's SUV parked crooked in her driveway down the block. Curtains drawn. No movement. I didn't honk. I didn't wave. I didn't look for closure. I had somewhere better to be. The flight to DC was smooth. Quiet. I kept my headphones in, but no music played. Just silence. Thought. Breathing. At Reagan Airport, a staff sergeant met me at baggage claim and escorted me to the military vehicle. He didn't say much, but offered a sharp salute when we pulled up to the Joint Base entry gate. I returned it. I sat in the guest quarters that night, reading through the panel notes. One section jumped out: personal experiences of public conflict resolution, framing dignity in uniform. I laughed under my breath. Framing dignity. That's one way to describe getting slapped by your sister in front of a Swarovski display. But I knew what they meant. They weren't asking for war stories. They were asking for humanity. Proof that the values we claim to stand for still mean something under pressure. I could do that. Not for Danielle. Not for my parents. Not even for the colonel who stepped in. For me. Because maybe, for the first time in my life, people were finally seeing the difference between silence and submission. And this time, I'd speak up. Halfway through my grilled salmon at the Belmont, a quiet, overpriced restaurant in Arlington, I saw Danielle walk through the door like she wasn't 3 days deep into a social media scandal. She spotted me immediately. Of course she did. I was the only one in uniform, sitting straight, with my napkin folded neatly and my water glass untouched. She wore a pale pink blazer over something silky and low-cut. Her hair was done, her makeup flawless, and that same smug confidence she wore like armor. She walked over with the forced smile you use on donors or cops. "You ordered already?" she asked, slipping into the chair across from me. "No," I lead. Still deciding. She waved over the waiter without asking, then ordered a glass of wine like she owned the place. "I didn't expect you to respond to my message," she said. I didn't respond. "Mom gave you my itinerary." She winced. She thought it would be good for us to talk. Privately. "Nothing's private anymore, Danielle. You made sure of that." Her mouth tightened. "I didn't upload the video. You slapped a soldier in uniform. The internet did the rest. I lost 2 sponsorship deals because of that. Do you know how hard I worked for those? Harder than restraining your hand in public?" Her wine arrived. She took a long sip, trying to reset the tone. I didn't offer her one. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. I raised an eyebrow. Could have fooled me. She leaned forward. "Look, I overreacted. I was emotional. You were smug, you always have been, and I snapped. You hit me." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You embarrassed me." I stared at her. "You embarrassed yourself. I just didn't protect you from the fallout this time." That landed. She looked down at her napkin, fiddled with the corner like a thread that could unravel the past 10 years. "Do you want money?" she asked suddenly. "Is this about leverage?" I blinked. "What? You always acted like you didn't care about image, but now you're all over the news, and people are calling you brave, and if you want to humiliate me further, let's just get it over with." "Danielle, I'm not here for revenge. You already handed that to me with perfect camera lighting." She swallowed hard. I continued. "I didn't ask to become a symbol. I didn't want to be the face of anything. But I'll tell you what I do want. She looked up. I want you to stop pretending that what you did was a minor slip. I want you to understand that you humiliated me. In public. In front of strangers. For no reason other than you can't stand that I exist outside your shadow. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked them away fast. Too practiced to cry in public. Too prideful to apologize correctly. I was angry because you always come home and act like you're better than us, she said. Like your choices are more noble. They're just different. You left. You got out. You had purpose. And what did I get? A mortgage, a kid, and 3 committees who only like me when I'm useful. And that's my fault? It's not fair. She snapped, then caught herself, glancing around. I exhaled. You know what's not fair? Fighting your way through military ranks while people, like you call it, cosplay. Coming home once a year to a family that makes jokes about PTSD. And still thinking maybe this time, they'll see you. Silence. Then she whispered, I was jealous. There it was. Not an apology. But the truth, at least. You still slapped me, I said. I know. And it went viral. I know. And I have to carry that into rooms now for the rest of my career. She looked away. I thought this dinner might be about closure, I said. But really, it just confirmed what I already knew. She looked at me. Which is that we were never sisters. We were just girls raised in the same house, told we were supposed to love each other. That's harsh. It's honest. The check came. She didn't reach for it. I paid. As we walked out, she tried to hug me. I stepped back. You don't get to hit me and then hug it away, I said. She nodded once. Okay. Outside, the wind had picked up. The city lights flickered against passing cars. I didn't offer her a ride. I didn't ask if she'd be okay. I just turned, returned to the base shuttle, and got in. As the vehicle pulled away, I looked at my reflection in the glass. No guilt, no ache. Just clarity. She had finally said it, and I'd finally stopped waiting for anything more. The next morning started at 0500. No alarm needed. My body still ran on army time, and the nerves didn't exactly let me sleep. I ironed my dress uniform, checked every button and thread, and ensured every pin was perfectly aligned. If I were to sit in a room full of policymakers and career officers, I would do it squared away. The panel was hosted at a mid-size auditorium inside a Department of Defense annex. Nothing flashy, just wood panels, microphones, and rows of those slightly too short chairs made for government posture. A lieutenant escorted me to the back room where the other speakers waited. Colonel Renshaw was already there. He looked up from his notes and grinned. Well, look who made lieutenant colonel level headlines. I smiled. Didn't know a jewelry store counted as deployment. He chuckled. Sometimes the front line's just closer to home than we'd like. The civilian moderator entered and gave us the rundown. We'd each get 6 minutes to introduce ourselves and speak briefly about our experience in the context of values under pressure. Then, there will be a Q&A and informal breakout conversations with attending officers and guests from civilian oversight committees. I nodded along. It was the format designed to feel casual while being recorded and dissected by 20 different agencies. I wasn't nervous. I'd briefed generals before. This was different, but not harder. When it was my turn to speak, I walked up to the podium, scanned the room, and said, My name is Captain Lena McAdams. I serve with the U.S. Army's Signal Corps. Last week, I went home for 4 days and got slapped in a jewelry store. Not by an enemy, by my sister. A few chuckles. Some audible inhales. But I'm not here to tell a dramatic story. I'm here because someone filmed that moment. And in it, I didn't fight back. I didn't escalate. I stood still. Not because I was frozen, but because I understood finally that not every attack deserves a reaction. Sometimes leadership looks like discipline, not dominance. I saw nods. People are leaning in. No side glances at phones. They were listening. I've spent years learning how to manage conflict overseas. But I learned something new last week. Managing it at home is often harder. The army gave me tools, my family gave me history. And when those two collided, what I had left was my choice. My posture. My presence. That's what leadership is. 6 minutes, sharp. I ended with a quiet thank you and returned to my seat. After the panel, I didn't even reach the coffee table before 2 Pentagon aides stopped me. "That was powerful," one of them said. "We've had a lot of soldiers speak on operations, but not many who can speak like that about restraint." "Appreciate it, sir." Colonel Renshaw joined us and clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you people were paying attention." "Guess I underestimated the internet." He smiled. "We're submitting your name for a rotational leadership slot in the Public Affairs Working Group. 1-year detail, you'd stay in uniform, just more visible." I blinked. "That's unexpected." "You've earned it," he said. "And frankly, the Army could use someone like you in the room when we talk about public trust. You've lived both sides of it now." I didn't answer right away. My brain was racing. A year in DC, working at the policy level? It was a different kind of battlefield, but I might be built for one. The rest of the day moved fast. I shook hands with a former senator, answered questions from a group of ROTC cadets, got roped into a podcast taping I hadn't agreed to, but somehow ended up being the highlight. By 1800, I was back in my quarters, exhausted but lit up in that specific way you get after doing something hard that felt right. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the folder Colonel Renshaw had slipped me before he left. Inside, the rotation offer, notes from the panel, a copy of my speech, transcribed and highlighted. He'd written in the margin, "Sometimes, silence is the speech they never forget." I lay back, still in uniform, eyes open. I didn't feel like a victim. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a soldier who had spent her whole life proving herself in the loudest, toughest places and had just learned that the quiet moments mattered just as much. This wasn't about redemption. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about arrival. 3 weeks after the panel, I was already neck-deep in DC life meetings, briefings, coffee-fueled strategy sessions where acronyms flew like shrapnel. I wasn't lost in it, though. I'd done more complicated things in worse boots. And strangely, I liked it. One morning, as I was heading out the door with a travel mug in one hand and a folded laptop under my arm, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You might want to check this out." Attached was a link. Local Charleston news. I clicked. There she was. Danielle. Flushed, jaw tight, surrounded by reporters outside what looked like a courtroom. The Chiron read, "Local socialite Danielle Weller under scrutiny for financial misconduct in nonprofit leadership." I didn't move. Just watched the video play. According to the news anchor, her foundation had been flagged during a routine audit. Missing funds. Inflated invoices. Ghost contractors. She wasn't under arrest, but she was under investigation. Her board had already requested her resignation, which was pending review. I read the article twice. Then a third time. It wasn't just bad PR. It was a collapse. She was the queen of garden luncheons and donor galas a month ago. Now, she was fighting for her reputation in front of every lens she used to control. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt nothing. No, not nothing distance. Back at my desk, I sat through a policy meeting about officer misconduct and thought about how Danielle always joked that she'd never survive in uniform. Maybe because she knew rules were optional in her world until they weren't. At lunch, I scrolled through her social media. Silence, no new posts. Comments locked. The perfect facade cracked just enough for people to start digging. Then I got a call from my mom. She didn't waste time. "You've seen it?" "I have." "She's devastated. She made choices. She said you wouldn't even call." I pinched the bridge of my nose. What does she want? An apology? She wants her sister. I wanted that for years. She gave me violence and insults in return. "You're not the same as her." "You're right," I said. "I didn't commit fraud." There was a long pause on her end. "I don't know what you expect me to say," she finally whispered. I don't expect anything anymore, I replied. That's the difference. We hung up without a goodbye. That night, I stayed late at the office. Not because I had to, but because the quiet glow of the Pentagon at night made me feel clear. Like I finally belonged somewhere without needing to fight for it every second. One of the public affairs team majors walked past my desk and tossed me a folder. Congrats, he said. Looks like your name's on the shortlist for advanced command training. I raised an eyebrow. Already? Word gets around fast. Especially when you go viral and then back it up with actual competence. I laughed. Thanks. I think. After he left, I opened the folder. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was serious. A future track toward higher leadership. One I hadn't even dared to think about a month ago. I set it down and leaned back. Danielle had spent her life trying to be important in the eyes of the town, the donors, and the photographers. I had spent mine trying not to be dismissed by the people closest to me. Now here we were, her story unraveling, mine just getting written. It wasn't karma. It was a contrast. Ethan called around 2,200. His face popped up, smiling under poor lighting. You look like you just stared down a 5-star general. More like 5 spreadsheets and a folder full of maybe. I heard. Training truck? Possibly. He grinned. Told you. You're built for this. I hesitated. Danielle's in trouble. I saw. I didn't feel anything. That's called peace, Lena. I nodded. I think I expected to feel satisfied. She wrote your storyline for so long. Of course you're confused now that she's not holding the pen. That landed. I ended the call and stared out the window. Danielle wasn't my responsibility. She never was. I had just assumed that surviving her meant forgiving her, or fixing her, or rescuing her. It turns out that surviving her meant stepping away. Letting her deal with her weight. And letting myself rise without dragging that anchor behind me. I reviewed briefing slides in a shared workspace at the Pentagon when my CO tapped twice on the glass door. Colonel Briggs. Straight shooter, former ranger, allergic to flattery. He didn't do casual drop-ins. Got a minute, Captain? Of course, sir. He stepped inside and handed me a sealed envelope, like a rewrite memo. No expression, no build-up. You've been selected for promotion to major, effective next cycle. Paperwork's in here, congratulations. For a second, I didn't move. Promotions don't usually come with surprise delivery unless someone upstairs wants you to remember it. I thank you, sir. Oh. He nodded. Command sees potential. You've proven it's more than a viral moment. Don't let it go to your head. I won't. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. The Army doesn't promote people because they looked calm on camera. We promote them because they stay consistent when no one's filming. You did that. Then he was gone. I sat there holding the envelope, heart steady, breath slow. It wasn't shocking. It wasn't even pride. It was something cleaner. Like confirmation that everything I'd held together, every quiet win, every silent bite of my tongue, every second I didn't swing back had counted. I texted Ethan. It's official, Madge. He replied in under 10 seconds. Hell yes. You want cake or ammo as a gift? Both. The email blast went out by noon. People stopped by my desk, officers I barely knew, civilians who'd seen my name in a newsletter, one retired general who'd sat in on the panel and just wanted to say, "You give me hope for the next generation." I thanked them all. Smiled when it was appropriate. But inside, I wasn't celebrating. Because the truth is, part of me wanted to drive back to Charleston, walk right into Danielle's kitchen, and drop the promotion letter on her countertop. But I didn't. Because the best part of healing was realizing I didn't need her to see it, or validate it, or pretend to be happy for me. She could sit in her silence. I was busy earning mine. Later that evening, Colonel Renshaw invited me to a private strategy dinner with a few senior advisors and congressional liaisons. Nothing formal, just a chance to be in the room, as he said. I showed up early. Not to impress anyone, but because I like knowing where the exits are before people start talking policy. Halfway through the meal, a Navy commander leaned over and said, "You know, it's not just the slap that impressed people. It's how you walked through the fallout like it wasn't fire. I didn't have a rehearsed answer. So I just said, some of us learned early how to stand still when it burns. He raised his glass. To stillness. I raised mine back. To surviving the people who thought they could define you. The night ended with a handshake from a senator I'd only seen on C-SPAN. He didn't say much, just, keep showing up like that, Major. Then he was gone. I walked back to the base quarters in a light mist, boots thudding against the wet concrete. No music in my ears. No calls. Just the sound of progress that didn't need a parade. When I got back, I opened the envelope again. Read the promotion memo from top to bottom. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I wanted to remember how it looked when your name was finally on something that mattered. And I thought of my younger self, fresh out of basic, shoulders too stiff, always wondering if I'd made the right choice. That version of me had no idea how brutal it would be, not the deployments, but the dismissals. The way some people back home made it sound like the uniform was just a costume I wore to feel important. I had no clue how many rooms I'd walk into that weren't built for me, and how many I'd eventually stand at the front of. I folded the letter, slipped it into my duffel, and checked my calendar. Tomorrow was another early call. Another closed-door meeting. Another round of decisions that might shape something. And I'd be there. Not because of a viral video. Not because of pity, or politics, or timing. But because I showed up repeatedly and refused to let anyone else tell my story louder than I lived it. The flight back to Charleston landed early, at 6:43 a.m. The airport was quiet, fog curling along the tarmac, like the town wasn't ready to wake up. I didn't bring a duffel this time. Just a small carry-on and the quiet confidence that I wasn't here to prove anything. The rental car still smelled like plastic and dealership lies. I drove through the old streets without music, past neighborhoods I used to memorize from the backseat of Dad's truck. Same cracked sidewalks. Same overgrown lawns. But I wasn't seeing them through clenched teeth anymore. I pulled into the driveway at my parents' house. Mom opened the door before I even rang the bell. "You're early," she said. "So's the sun." She didn't smile, but she stepped aside. Inside, nothing had changed. The wallpaper still curled near the corners. The same dusty ceramic bowl sat by the front door to collect keys and unspoken tension. Dad wasn't home. She told me he had a fishing trip scheduled. A strategic absence, I assumed. We sat in the kitchen. She poured me coffee without asking. Still too hot. Still too bitter. "I saw the news," she said. "Promotion. DC rotation." I nodded. "You're making something of yourself." "I've been doing that for years. You just finally noticed." She flinched, but didn't argue. "Danielle's staying with friends," she added, after a long pause. "Says the press is hounding her." "She'll survive," I said flatly. "She keeps asking about you. Whether you'll see her." I looked out the window. The dogwood tree I used to climb as a kid was still there, stubborn as ever. I didn't come here for Danielle. Then why? To pick up something I left behind. She tilted her head. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, black velvet box. Not dramatic, just simple. Inside, the bracelet I bought weeks ago. Still perfect, still untouched. "I came to give this to myself. Properly." She stared at it, confused. "It was supposed to be a gift for my engagement," I said. "But now it's a marker for survival." "You're not marrying Ethan." "I will," I said. "But this isn't about him. This is for me. For walking out of this house 100 times and coming back standing straighter each time." Her face twisted, like she wanted to say something soft but didn't have the tools. "You always acted like I was performing something by putting on that uniform," I said. "Like I was just playing soldier. But I wasn't pretending, I was escaping." "Oh." Her hands trembled slightly around the coffee mug. "You don't have to keep punishing me for the way I raised you." "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm just finally refusing to carry what wasn't mine." We sat in silence for a moment. "I wish I'd been stronger," she finally said. "I do too," I replied. Another beat of silence, this one gentler. She looked like she wanted to cry, but didn't know if she was allowed. "I'll be at the house for 2 days," I said. "I have to head back to D. C after." She nodded. That evening, I walked down to the park near our old school. The benches were still worn smooth by time. Kids screamed on the playground like war had never been invented. I sat by the fountain, pulled the bracelet from my coat pocket, slipped it onto my wrist. It clicked shut with a soft snap. Felt like a ceremony. Like giving myself a medal no one else thought of awarding me. As I sat there, a familiar voice called my name. I turned. Danielle. Hair pulled back. No makeup. A hoodie 2 sizes too big. It might have been the first time I'd seen her look small. "I heard you were in town," she said. "Not here for long." She nodded and took a cautious seat at the far end of the bench. "Mom said you gave yourself the bracelet." I nodded. "It's pretty," she added, after a pause. "Thanks." She looked down at her hands. No rings, no nail polish, just skin and guilt. "I lost everything." I said nothing. "And I deserved it," she continued. Still nothing. I thought, maybe you'd want to hear me say that. I finally turned toward her. "What I want is not to carry you anymore. Not your shame, not your ego, not your apology. I'm not here to process your downfall." She swallowed. "Okay. I'm here to reclaim space. That's it." She blinked fast, looked away. "I don't know how to fix it. I'm not asking you to." She stood up slowly, like the weight of everything she built had finally settled into her spine. Before she walked away, she said, "You were always stronger than me." I didn't respond. Some truths don't need echoing. I sat there until the sun dipped behind the trees. Cool air is brushing my face. The bracelet caught what little light was left. No audience. No camera. No performance. Just peace. The next morning, I stopped by the same jewelry store where everything went down, not for drama, not to relive anything. I just wanted to finish something I started. The clerk recognized me instantly. She didn't say anything, but how her eyes widened and flicked toward my wrist told me everything. Yes, she'd seen the video. Yes, she remembered me. Yes, this was weird. I gave her a tight smile and pointed to the display case. There was a pair of earrings in that case back in May. Small, rose gold, studs. She nodded. "I remember. We still have them." Of course they did. No one else came in here looking for clarity in the form of accessories. She brought them out and laid the velvet tray between us. They were as simple as I remembered. No flash, no dangling mess. Just strong lines and quiet shine. They didn't ask to be noticed, they just existed like they had nothing to prove. I paid for them without hesitation. When she handed me the small white bag, she said, "You handled yourself with a lot of grace that day." Not everyone would have. I shrugged. Didn't feel like grace. Felt like grit. She smiled. "Same thing, if you ask me." I walked out and stood on the sidewalk for a moment. Same parking lot. Same spot where I stood after Danielle slapped me, trying not to shake, trying not to cry, trying not to lose the years I'd spent building a version of myself I could finally live with. Now I didn't need to try not to fall apart because I wasn't cracking. Back at my rental, I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the box, and put the earrings on. Not because I needed to look pretty. Not because they matched my outfit. But I had waited long enough to wear something that belonged to me. They weren't about jewelry. They were about reclaiming something. Dignity, maybe. Or patience. Or power that didn't have to shout. Looking in the mirror, I didn't see a woman trying to prove she mattered. I saw a woman who already knew. I had the scars. I had the silence. I had the damn earrings. Ethan called around noon. "You home yet?" "Almost. Just finishing something." "Oh, want me to pick you up from the airport?" "Yeah," I said. "But don't bring flowers, bring tacos." He laughed. Done. The flight back to DC was easy. Short, unremarkable. No turbulence, no existential questions. Just a quiet descent into a city where I finally felt like I belonged. At the base, as I stepped out of the car, one of the younger soldiers spotted me and did a double take. "Ma'am," she said, "those earrings are really nice." "Thanks," I replied. "They mean a lot." I didn't elaborate. Some things don't need explanation. Some things are worn like medals, even in little white boxes. Back in my quarters, I unpacked quickly. No chaos, no mess. Just the rhythm of someone who's built a life they like living in. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for how I got here. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not even the internet. It didn't matter who watched me fall, only that I stood back up without asking for applause. The earrings were never the point. But they'll stay with me, anyway. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud or sharp or viral. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's rose gold. And sometimes, it just sits on your ears while you walk into the next room head high, voice steady, life entirely your own. I used to think revenge had to look like a grand moment, like standing over someone who wronged you while they begged for mercy. But life isn't a movie. And real family revenge? It doesn't come with dramatic music or slow motion. It comes quietly when you stop asking for someone else's permission to be okay. This wasn't a story about payback. It was about choosing dignity over noise, silence over spectacle, boundaries over bitterness. And sometimes, the loudest statement you'll ever make is showing up, succeeding, and not looking back. Because walking away with your peace intact, that's the kind of revenge that lasts. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever dealt with family drama that pushed you to fight harder, live louder, or protect your peace, make sure to subscribe. We dive into real, emotional, and powerful family revenge stories like this. Stories of quiet strength, dignity, and growth. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more revenge stories that feel all too real, and if you've got one of your own, tell us in the comments. Because here, your story matters too.